Now again. Hello, 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 everyone. Uh,
Hello.
welcome and welcome. Good evening. Welcome to Time to Talk, your bi-weekly special date to talk about mediumship. Um, Hi, Faye. How are you doing? It's a pleasure to be back here with you. How's everything?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. Very nice to see you again. And let me take the opportunity, since it's the 1st of August, let me greet everyone in a lovely way as the Greeks do. Say, Kalomina means have a wonderful month.
Oh,
Yeah,
Kalomina then. I love that.
Kalomina. Yeah.
Um, Faye, today, I don't think you know that. I didn't tell you that. But today marks our episode 52, which is 2 years of Time to Talk.
Oh,
So, yes,
wow.
we are celebrating our 2 years anniversary. Uh,
That's, is that wonderful?
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
who would have thought? I mean,
Hello. Congratulations.
it's very nice to be doing this, studying, reflecting, bringing this opportunity for 2 years now. Thank you to you. Thank you to Munir. Thank you to Guilherme. Thank you to Pablo. Thank you to
Absolutely. Thank
everybody
you.
who joined us. Elsa
It's a
uh,
pleasure.
joined, participated, send us the comments, all of our the usual suspects that help us in bringing this a dynamic feel.
Yeah.
And the reason why we created Time to Talk. Mateo is already saying happy anniversary to us. Thank you, Mateo.
We should
Um,
have a tiny birthday cake planned.
I should have thought about that. Maybe we would have brought a little bit of a cake so we could have celebrated.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matteo. Happy for the happy anniversary. Thank you.
But
Wonderful.
it
I
is.
saw that I saw the signs 52, but that reminds me something.
Yeah.
That's a year. No, it's two. It's
Yeah, it's because we do every 2 weeks, right? If it was every week,
exactly
it would be 1 year.
perfect. Yeah,
But yeah,
wonderful.
2 years. And look, this the idea. What's the idea behind Time to Talk? When we started Time to Talk, the plan was and still is to have um, a forum, an opportunity for people to bring questions, cases, comments, share anything related to mediumship. It's not meant to be a lecture. It's meant to be a conversation. It's meant to be
No,
a
it's
space.
not for us. It's for you guys, for everyone
Absolutely.
who gives us the pleasure to gives you company. Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
And that's why, I mean, so happy to be here for after 2 years doing Time to Talk is still going. Um,
Hmm.
let's make this as dynamic as possible. Today, I have a super special topic,
Yes.
which is something that is very discussed. And with every single medium that I talk to, this is always something that is part of their thought and their mind. It's always in their mind. Even the ones that I may get more used to, they still sometimes go back to that question. And we're going to explore that, ask people to share their opinions, their experiences they might have,
Please,
um,
yes.
what they think that can help, it can be useful to tell the differentiation apart.
Yeah. We'd love to hear you guys, hear your opinion, your questions.
And as in your comments in the comment
Yes,
chat.
your comments.
Before we kick off, our usual, the three institutions behind Time to Talk are Spirit Society of London, which is a study group that organizes a few sessions online and face to face to study about Spiritism here in the UK. SSL is affiliated to BUS, British University Spiritist Societies, who tries to coordinate and connect the different Spiritist groups here in the UK. And the third one, Kardec Radio, is also a big broadcaster for a lot of content in English about Spiritism. It's been around for, I think, over 12 years now. And
Yeah.
thanks to these three institutions, we are here bringing this opportunity, this session, this conversation, this chat room to all
Mhm.
of you. Right. Okay. Today,
Right.
episode 52. And mediumship, telling reality from imagination. And when we're talking to Faye, you see that we are still trying to talk about the relevance, the importance, the nuances, the surround, the work of mediumship. We always talk about the importance of study and work, and then we try to bring clarity about what does work with mediumship means from a spiritist
Mm.
perspective. And now we're going to talk about, okay, but how then do you know? How can we tell if um, there is a specific message being received that is really coming from a spirit, or if it's imagination from the medium? And that's where we're going to start our conversation from. Faye,
Yeah.
I think you wanna bring a clarification before you dive into that, right? So I'll pass it
Yeah.
on to you.
Thank you. I thought it would be because in some places, in the different places in different continents, there are countries even, there are slightly different concepts, ideas about what a medium is and what a mediumship work is about and what for. And the got distracted. Oh, okay. One of the words that we hear a lot in the English-speaking countries um, is that. So just 1 second, please, because I'm getting distracted here. Yeah. Otherwise,
Message is being received.
sorry about
That's
that.
okay. That's okay.
One word that's used. I'm not. Let's make it clear. It's not a matter of judging anything as for good or bad or no, but there is a distinction that I think that it needs to be made so that everything that we say is going to make sense. So that's our perspective. Okay, we hear a lot about psychics, and everyone that shows any sensitivity, any extra perception, any sensitivity of normal or paranormal perception um, is helped with the word first. Oh, probably you've got psychic abilities, you've got a psychic sensibility, and meaning that if you go according to the dictionary, a psychic would be um, apparently any ability to connect to something that's not clearly explained. That's a dictionary. Yeah. Um, well, and as far from that, so there's a bit of a vague concept. What is it? You know, it's it goes from the people like I was saying, like in Harry Potter just now, is as well somebody who writes the book Magical Me, you know, something like that, to a very hazy definition of what it is to trust your gut feelings, trust the signals, whatever you feel, perceive from the world, from energy. Well, it's true. We're all energy, we're made of energy, and we connect to energy. Einstein said that we're all made up of energy, but then he said, match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. That's Einstein. So we're all energy, we connect, and when you say match the frequency, means he implies that there is an intention, right? There is an intention to focus on some frequency for some purpose. Ask and you will get it, right? Jesus said that too.
Yeah.
So the difference between this very broad definition of or explanations of what psychics are and what they could be, from signs in the clouds to rainbows to whatever, to the environment, to what we say, what we call being a medium, It's just that we define that mediumship, first of all, is an organic ability. It's not a magical ability. It feels magical, it looks magical, but it's actually very organic, very real, and measured and assessed scientifically. But the most materialistic people can assess mediumship degrees or abilities. That is one thing. And the other is that if there is an intention, if there is the possibility of using energy with an intention or not, mediumship is the physical, organic ability that allows us to develop towards working that skill for the purpose of good. Well, it's to connect for some good, for some benefit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point, that's the purpose. Whether it happens that way is just that it would be like saying, well, imagine somebody who's a very good driver, a wonderful driver. He can use that car to take children to school, to take people for a ride, or he can use that car to crash into others.
Yeah.
He's still a driver.
The tool itself is doesn't have the good or bad. It's the use of it.
Yeah, that's right. And the use of it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
A personal difference, and a difference that can allow a medium to carry on developing and working, or lose it altogether. Does it make sense?
Total sense. And there were a few words that you mentioned that completely kind of popped when you mentioned it. I think for me, a few ones was intention and it was purpose. I think those two words, we're going to go back to those words a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, we've been discussing about mediumship for 2 years now. We've talked about so many aspects. But one thing that we always go back to, and you already touched on that, Faye, is how that is a biological characteristic that we have. And in some people it's more developed, some people it's less developed, but it is just part of life. And then we looked at, for instance, when we were discussing about Gabriel Delan and how much time him and many other investigators and scholars and so on dedicated a lot of time to investigate the phenomenon itself, to prove that the phenomena exists, it happens, and give enough evidence to give accounts for those phenomena, those the production coming from the mediums, or physically or intellectually, it could not be a result of the medium themselves only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now, so let's assume we're starting from the principle that the mediumship is there, it happens. And we know that there are multiple ways where mediumship can be used and worked in different types of work. Receiving messages of encouragement and hope to people, to help people go through specific problems, or even by receiving messages and helping spirits that are in trouble. We talked about the rescue work, to understand their situation and so on. Now, the thing is, if we think about the psychological phenomena, so the phenomena where the medium is listening, hearing, or thinking something, receiving a message from a spirit, how do we know as a medium that message, that thought, that those words, that speech is not my imagination? It is actually coming from someone else. That's the question, right? That's the main question. And that is something that many mediums, as they start developing things, getting in contact with their mediumship, they have that question.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go months and months participating, mediums participate in mediumistic meetings for months and months and months, and they would still question themselves if, is it themselves, is it not? How do we know then?
Yeah. You know, this is a very good question. And it's a question that I've asked myself, and I ask myself all the time. And perhaps I'll probably tire my mentors with a question because of the way, as you get to work, the way it develops, it becomes almost like a second nature. It becomes as natural as it is when you pick up a pen or a pencil to write. You learn it, you get used to it, you learn the mechanism, and it becomes an extension of you. By the way, in the Medium's book, chapter 19 deals with this sort, many aspects in many details of this sort of question. Well, in principle, we know that mediumship exists despite the observer. It doesn't matter if the observer likes it or not, believes it or not, it is. It's there. And if a person feels that there is a connection, that there is this urge to, and there is a perception that gives them another insight, an insight, a need to know more. It's something as if I've seen an explanation today. It's like having an inner magnet that pushes you towards something or far away from something. It's more than a gut feeling. It's more than no, maybe it is a simple intuition. No, it's a way of making connections. If you have the purpose of doing good, for example, then there is a connection to those. They're not going to predict the future, but they're going to help you reason. And by reasoning at this level and with better, more aware, more clearer, higher advice, we learn to reason in an honest manner that will, if you see something that is good and it's at the tip of my hand that I should do it, I will do it. I can't help. I can't avoid it. I have to do it. Because something greater tells me that that's something worth doing for my betterment, but mostly to whoever's on the other side of that action. Incarnate or discarnate, it doesn't matter. Good is good.
Yeah.
By the same token, if I see something with this awareness and the study, and they say, don't do it, pass, don't do it, just don't go. And we can still go, and we still insist on doing something that it's more than our gut feeling, our soul is telling, don't. Then there is a very deep and heavy and uncomfortable sense of regret. Why? Why didn't I hear it? Why did I have to do that? So, and what is this remorse for? Just to say, I told you.
Yeah.
Just all it means that, well, You have to face a situation like that again and see how you react to it again. Are you going to go against your gut feeling and get hurt and get sick, or not? Are you going to refrain from being stubborn, but it's obviously not the right way?
You touched on a few items that I think are super important. Again, some expressions. I think the one you just used, gut feeling, is something very important. I think a lot of people, how do they find themselves? So they discover themselves mediums, right? Some of them might, stumble upon a spiritist group and start studying and realize there's the sensitivity there, and then they develop their mediumship. But some others, they come from trouble, right? From troubled experiences in terms of intrusive thoughts, intrusive feelings, ideas that are repetitive, they are not theirs, that don't really resonate with how they feel, how they think, but they start to being influenced. And so you have different people there arrive to mediumship in different ways. But in both of them, there's an element, and that's why I like when you use the word, the phrase gut feeling. There's an element connected to feeling, to how they feel, to the impact of whatever they are thinking or hearing or listening to, and how that affects here, how they are feeling. Because it's only by paying attention to how those thoughts are coming to fruition, where are they coming from, how are they making you feel, how abrupt they are, how inconvenient they are, or how disciplined they are, that they only happen in a moment, that you allow them. So I'll tell you what usually happens if you start learning and studying about mediumship and developing mediumship from a moment or a situation of being unbalanced medium into a balanced medium.
Mm-hmm.
You struggle to control your mediumship, right? You are receiving messages, you are getting stuck with ideas that are not yours all the time at work, in the shopping mall, and when you do your groceries and you're talking to your friends. So those are things that are affecting you and influencing you and intruding your thoughts in any moment. As you start to understand what is that, why is it happening, where is it coming from, it's not from me, but I have the ability to connect to those things. And then the spirits also sense they have the ability, and that's why they go on to you. And then you start to learn about, okay, these are the things I need to do to put the controls, the rail guards around. So I will only allow this to be assessed, to be used in specific contexts, with specific purpose, with specific intention. Then you will start to, it becomes very clear when thought and ideas come from you or they are external to you.
Exactly. I like, as you know, I like to try and make things sound very practical. As we're talking of cosmos, and I like to make it sound down to earth, because it's in heaven as on earth. Is it's the same rule of universe everywhere. If people think, well, if when we're growing up or throughout life, if we have a good relationship, for example, with a brother or sister, mom and dad, a relative, somebody that we love, somebody we trust, and we've talked a lot, and we come to agreement. So we see eye to eye in many things. And at some point we decide, we come confronted with this possibility of acting according to what we say we believe, that we say we agree, or going against it just for the sake of it. Just for, okay. It's asking, well, okay, why? You want to try the other side and see it, try doing things differently to see what happens? We can. It's not a matter of having to obey anyone or anything for the fear of a punishment or loss. That's beside the point. It's not the point. It's a matter of wasting precious time, having to redo things, learning things the hard way, when we've already, I'm not saying you, we've already agreed the easier way, the most logical way. And then when we move on to studying, for example, we go to uni, I want to learn a profession, a job, something really complicated that's full of rules, because those are the rules that make the profession reliable and the science work. Now, going against that is going to break a building, kill someone, cause injury. It's not going to be, it cannot be called the profession, nobody can comply or can be respected or be accepted within that realm if they don't comply to the rules that are basic to that purpose. If I want to be an engineer, which I wouldn't, because I'm a rubbish with numbers. I make a mess with numbers. Then I would have to work really hard to do exactly what is expected of a good engineer to do. Or like that. And that applies to being mediums as well. Do I have the potential to be an engineer? In theory, yes. Can I? Possibly. Do I want to? Well, maybe I can, but maybe I'm not suited for that level. But there may be something around that area that I'm suited to do that I can do. Maybe I can't be an engineer, but I can do something around it with their guidance.
Yep.
Isn't it? But that's life, and the mediumship is part of life. And as in life, it is got a time to develop organically, intuitively, lightly, not so compromised, until it gets to a point that it requires compromise. It requires a certain commitment. I would commit to working in that way, in that manner, observing certain principles. Or we don't. It's a choice. Now, how can I tell if it's if the idea that is coming to my head is something that I'm writing is mine or not? That is a question that we have all the time. But we can, for example, observe the quality, the differences. We're not saying that we're not judging anyone for being better or worse, intellectually better or worse. But one of the clear signs is, for example, that when the idea and the insight and the vocabulary, for example, is not my usual style. It's not my usual language. It's not even my time. Yeah. And I said, okay. So I trust this guidance, and so I'm at the service of light, guided by Jesus above all. And then I will see what the quality is.
Yeah.
But what if the quality is, let's say, not as strong as what I am able to produce myself? What does that mean? What if my speech is not exactly the one at that point of work? Is not exactly my own style, is perhaps even a bit more limited? What does that mean? It means that I'm able to allow somebody on the other side to communicate at the moment in need. And that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
That person has been allowed the proximity, has been trained, has been allowed the proximity to somebody who would lovingly, non-judgmentally let them speak and hear, because otherwise they couldn't. And that's where the rescue work starts,
Yeah.
I think.
Absolutely. When you were describing, so Marco shared with us a bit of his comments as well, and there's a lot that links to what you were saying. That he says that the medium know by their self-confidence or by their experience, and I want to just focus on this too: the self-confidence that comes from the experience, and by the knowledge that you study, how frequent you get involved in the mediumship group, the Spirit Center. And of course, in serious work, you're with a group of people that will be, the counselors, the people coordinating their work, and so on. So you're not having to do that yourself. But I want to focus on two things that he mentioned here that are very similar to, are connected to what you said, which is, again, self-confidence and experience. Because that comes from the knowledge that you have about yourself. So, Faye, we were talking about examples of, depending on what kind of content the message brings, you are able to clearly say, "Oh no, this is something I don't know about, so therefore it's clearly not something that I'm making up."
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to the other example that you gave here, which is if you're talking about troubles, problems, issues that somebody passed in their previous life, let's remember that these spirits, they're just people like us. They went through their lives, through the tribulations of their lives, and now they are in a place where they're trying to figure it out. They need to receive some help. So those narratives, they are easier, let's say, for somebody to say, "Oh, maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe I'm creating this character in my mind." How do we know that's not true then? I want to bring here a passage because there's a chapter. Well, there's one of the books. We always go back to the same book. So we always go back to André Luiz and his beautiful work about the life on the other side. One specific book is called In the Realms of Mediumship, and we go back to that book all the time. And in chapter 5, I'm going to read a couple of passages. Let me explain what happened in chapter 5. First of all, chapter 5, the title is The Assimilation of Mental Currents. So on its own, it gives you food for thought already, right? Before I read the chapter, let's just remember, thought is how us and all spirits express ourselves. Our ideas, our sentiments, everything is through thought. And we are all susceptible to connect to those thoughts based on affinity, right? Are those thoughts similar to how I feel, how I think, how I see things? Are they different? If they are similar, then there's a connection here, and then I link to that line of thought. If there isn't, then I move away. As Faye was talking about the magnet, I love that image. You're either drawn to or you are repelled from. Anyway, assimilation of mental currents. In this chapter, we have the observers on the other side, where they are going to a mediumistic session, so they can observe what is happening in the mediumistic session. What is the connection between the spirits on one side and the mediums? What's the connection between the coordinators of the meetings on the spiritual world and how they link to the coordinators or the indoctrinators or agents? Forgot the word. Like on our side. And there's an opening prayer before they start the work. And for the opening prayer, the coordinator on the spiritual side gets closer to the counselor, the coordinator, let's say, in the material side, and influences it. It touches, almost like touches puts the hand on their head and kind of influences them to make a prayer that's actually coming from the other side. This is not a medium who is there to receive messages. This is a person who is there to talk to the spirits that come through the other mediums, right?
Right.
But in that moment, he's being influenced by the benefactor in a mediumistic way. So let me read the passage. There you go. We have just seen the phenomenon of the perfect assimilation of mental currents that usually preside over nearly all mediumistic phenomena. To clarify, let's compare one of our incarnate workers to a receiving apparatus like those used in broadcasting. By condensing his thought and will, his mental emissions, the benefactor's mental emissions, envelop the incarnate co-worker in a profusion of rays that reach his inner field. First, through the pores of the skin, which are myriads of antennae upon which the emissions take on the aspect of weak and indistinct impressions. These impressions connect with the spirit's body centers, which act like condensers and immediately reaches the cables of the nervous system, which in turn perform the role of induction coils. I know it sounds technical, but bear with me. I'm going to read the second half of the paragraph. There, impressions accumulate in an instant and then are automatically reconstituted in the brain, where we possess hundreds of motor sensors, similar to a miraculous keyboard of electromagnets linked to each other, and whose dynamic center mental actions and reactions are processed, determining creative vibrations through thought or speech, with the brain acting as a powerful broadcasting and receiving station and the mouth as a loudspeaker. Such stimuli are also expressed through the mechanisms of the hands and feet and through the sense and organs, which operate in the manner of cranes and conductors, transformers, and analyzers under the direct command of the mind. Thank you for bearing with me. I know it's a complicated paragraph, but what were they describing to us? That there is such an affinity between the co-worker in that moment and the benefactor on the other side, that the impressions, how did the benefactor on the other side give impressions to the co-worker so the co-worker could do a prayer inspired in what they were trying to do? It was through their brain. It was through, they mentioned that even through the pores of their skin, they will receive that perception, they will receive the energy, and that will be absorbed into their nervous system and transformed into the ideas and inspirations that will come in their speech. Now, it's such a subtle, the way they describe it is so subtle, how we speak, how we think when we are prepared to do something. How do we know that it's coming from someone else? Especially in a case where there's so much affinity and so much communion between, the medium and the spirit on the other side. That's when the next step comes into play, right? Self-knowledge, which is, I'm going to link back to what Faye and Marco were talking about. Everything can be taught and can be learned. We have it's some things are easier for some and more difficult for others, but in the end, we can learn everything. Everything is learnable, right? It might be more difficult. You might not have the innate, ability to do something. It might take longer, more discipline. Might be more painful for some than the others, but in the end, we can learn things. So if you think about self-knowledge, I'm gonna go back to something that is so ancient. I'm gonna say, know thyself. That was said by Socrates.
Yeah.
How many years ago? How many years ago? Actually, I brought the full quote. It's knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. There's so much in this sentence from Socrates, God knows how many years ago. Because by understanding your own thoughts, your own feelings, where they come from, why are the way they are, how do you feel towards, how do you react to things, you feel towards things, it helps you to understand when something is being suggested to you or coming to you that is not yours.
Wonderful. That's it. So this is exactly, so what you're saying is, and it is also something that you will find also in your medium's book, is that this is a sort of there are two kinds of learning. Yeah, in education we said there are two kinds of learning. You can have a passive learning and an active learning. In a passive learning, you probably retain much less because well, as a student, you're there assimilating, letting things pass by, and sometimes they bounce, sometimes they don't. But when you have an active learning, which is a teaching style that's in use in the most advanced places everywhere, is it one in which the student, the learner, is asked, is not only invited, he's asked to think all the time and develop discernment, develop reasoning, so as to be able to tell what is right, what makes sense, and what doesn't, according in that field, according to what that's being discussed. So when the medium is being taught, is in contact, like you say, with higher spirits or higher teachers, those teachers are not expecting the medium to be passive learners, but on the contrary, if they're not prepared to be active learners, the ones who not only do the work, but they question, the reason, and they ask, and they go after information and try to also to learn from themselves and go back to the teacher.
Mhm.
Then the mediumship, the proper mediumship work doesn't work.
Develop. Yeah.
It doesn't happen. And he says that mediumship is an instrument of error. How can that be? People might ask, how could that be? Am I doing all this work to be an instrument of error? Yes. Error is allowed so that the medium is honest enough and alert enough to judge what makes sense and what doesn't. And sometimes it's allowed that something that sounds like a higher message goes through so that the receptor, the medium, is aware of what he's doing or what they're doing and say, well, hang on a minute. that doesn't make sense. I need to cross-check this. I need to double-check that.
Yeah.
And I need to double-check it, not me and my mentor. It's the other people who I'm working with. So I may have something, wow, that sounds brilliant. That's lovely. That's, superb message. But what about the other listeners? Do they think it's superb? Can they catch something that I've missed? So as a medium, I must be ready to take from someone else the remark about something that I've missed. That is part of my self-development.
Absolutely.
Being ready to take the advice. It won't be a criticism because I'm just an instrument. But even if it is, what if I decide, oh, no, this has got to be good?
Yeah.
And my friends are saying, not quite, Faye.
Yeah. You need to be able to be humble to accept a rejection because the rejection is not to you.
Yeah. I heard something fantastic today. It's a very tight, small snippet of Japanese culture. And they were asking about the principle of something in martial arts. And the teacher, sensei, was saying, well, originally that says one symbol says, deny yourself, learn to deny yourself, because the other means to be able to cope, to withstand the other, to fight the battle before. So this means if the ego is still active, still imposing, you will miss the attack. You will miss what the other part requires. So then you can't be a good fighter. You see, that's ancient.
Yeah. Lovely, Faye.
Isn't it?
Let me, just looking at the time here, I think we still have like 10 minutes. I want to read a couple of the aftermath of the what I just read in the chapter 5, because all of that complicated wording, it was just to say how subtle it is, the influence of the thoughts of the spirits into ourselves. If it's that subtle, that's why it's so difficult for us to know if the thought is ours or not. So when the spirits were observing this happening in that mediumistic group, they asked the coordinators, they said this thought, which is exclusive to each of us, flows incessantly from our brain like the heat and magnetic waves that are unique to each of us, and we normally use it to activate the resources we have. But it's not so easy to tell the difference between our own mental creation and one that comes in our head from others. Mentioned one of them. To which the teacher, let's say the coordinator, answered, "Your assertion is groundless. Any person who knows how to manage his or her attention can tell the difference, since our thoughts vibrate at a unique frequency that comes across in our specific mode of expression, habits, and points of view, and in the manner and style that are particular to us." Exactly what Faye mentioned. Then he went on and said, "In matters of this type, we must be very careful in our judgments. While we'll align our criterion with earthly standards, our mental life is almost always parasitic, since we hide our thought waves in order to reflect and act within established prejudices or pragmatism of pre-established customs, which are mental crystallizations in time. Or we follow the fashion of the day and the opinion of our friends, all constituting an easy accommodation that requires less effort. But it would be enough to practice meditation, to study constructively, and to get into the habit of discerning in order to understand where our line of thought lies, thus clearly identifying the spiritual currents that we are assimilating.
Wonderful.
What are they telling us? One thing, why is it extra difficult to identify this? Because one thing is what I'm saying, how I talk to people, how I react, what I'm projecting to people, because that's what I want people to perceive. The other thing is what's going on in my mind in reality without the social filter, right? But we know, actually, every single one of us, we know what's going on in our minds. So if you meditate, if you are able to focus your attention, you know what kind of vibration comes from your own thought. And if you know that, you are able to perceive if something it's not coming from you. Again,
Exactly.
it's why was I always saying that everything can be learned? Because this is a skill that comes with practice, that comes with discipline, that comes with trials, that comes with errors, like Faye was talking about.
Yeah. Can I add one line
Yeah, of course.
to this?
Yeah, yeah.
That I wrote it down because I thought it was really good. It says, deception is a tool to exercise judgment, to tell the right from wrong. So not a guilt trip. It's an exercise of judgment. The false communications from time to time are warnings not to think of themselves infallible and not to give way to pride, which again closes the circle. Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I think the
Guys, we did not agree that beforehand, okay? So
very true.
it's not scripted.
It was scripted on the other side, it must have been.
Oh, yeah.
But it goes back to what you were saying, right? How much of in developing your mediumship and in being able to feel comfortable identify what's yours, what's not, you need to be humble enough to detach from any pride that can come from the mediumistic work. And something that a friend of mine mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and something that really stuck to me about mediumistic work, which is we don't know the mediumistic work, the sessions, they are not prepared by us on this side. It's prepared by the spirit's benefactors and so on the other side.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to come out of it. Our job is to show up to work. What kind of work is going to come? What's going to unfold? It's not up to us.
No idea.
Don't allow that self-doubt, the question, the concern, the being overly concerned or worried about, oh, is this something that I'm imagining or not? Get in the way of the work that needs to be done. Let it flow. Let it flow. Of course, you have to be careful, observe, but without letting those thoughts stop the work from being done. If there's something wrong, the group around will be notified. The indication will come. The observations will make it clear.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck into, no, I'm not going to do the work because I think I'm imagining these things. No, show to work, and let the work unfold.
Yeah, it's just like get good. This takes me back to how it started. So, well, I have the question all the time. What I didn't say then is that, despite the question, exactly like you were saying, the reason says, look, once there is a bond of trust, and there's got to be a bond of trust between not just the mentors, but the people who are working around you, who become your mentors in a way, become your reference and your support. Because I know if something doesn't go quite right with me, I know one of them is going to jump in and help me out and help control the situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my doubt is not here or there. It's something that I will have to work with myself and reflect on people's or the friends' attitudes to say, well, you stop that, you quit that, or assess that. And even if it can be in doubt because you want to be very honest, then don't beat yourself too much, don't judge yourself too much, because nobody's there to judge anyone unless it's clear that the intention and the purpose does not match the high principles of that and values of that group.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfectly said, Faye. With that, we have a great segue to our closure. Let me bring our usual announcements before we close. Let me get the slides up. There you go. Everyone, as usual, we have a few other sessions that happen, different aspects. We have the messengers study group, which is the Andrea Louise books, right? So we started on every Monday at 7 p.m. We started studying Astral City. Now we're going to the second book, which is the messengers, and then we're going to keep going. It's a small intimate group. We read paragraph by paragraph. We just go through the book together. It's almost like a book club. Have the details here. Feel free to join on Mondays. Every Wednesday we have Spiritual Light with different guests touching different topics. Go to the Bus channel on YouTube and like it so you get the reminders and notifications of what's coming up. And on Mediumship, we have on Saturdays our group studying the Medium's book. Again, we're going item by item in the Medium's group. We open up for questions. It's a very democratic study group. The details are here. It's from 10:30 a.m. UK time to 11:30 a.m. And that is what we had for today. I want to say thank you very much to everyone who joined us. Thank you to Marco. Thank you to Matteo for the comments. And thank you to you, Faye. Any last words from you?
And thank you. Well, congratulations for carrying, for having, for the anniversary. And it's been a pleasure being here. And I hope we can carry this on for yet a long time.
We'll do. With that, goodbye, everyone. Hope to see you in 2 weeks. And that's it. Ciao,
If
Faye.
you have any questions, just send us some questions and we'll try to answer them. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Ciao.
See you. Ciao, ciao.